How can we light in a place where it's already lit? You can't make a bracha if it's already lit. You can't make a bracha because the halach is you have to have pleasure, you have to benefit from adlakas neiros. So yesterday we said a pshat. Today I want to discuss a little what's the best mokim to light? Where should you light? You have a bunch of rooms in your house. So of course, the minhag in Klal Yisrael is to light. But mokim achila, that's the best place to light. The problem arises that when you get married, you'll realize that not always do you eat in your own house. Especially Shana Rishayna. Shana Rishayna, you go to your shver, your in-laws, or you go to your parents. And the question comes up, many people ask, where should I light? Should I light by my in-laws? Should I light the place where I eat? Or when I come home, I should see the candles, and I should light it in the place where I sleep. Now, of course, the question is only relevant if you have long candles or whatever, you have a lot of oil, and you'll have the candles by the time you get back from your meal. From the suda, you'll get back, and the light will still be, the candles will still be lit, and you'll have a no when you come back home. But of course, like we spoke yesterday, that you have to have a no from the neiros of Shabbos. If one doesn't have a no, if one lights and he leaves and he doesn't see the candles after dark, then of course, it's a bracha levatolo. We spoke yesterday, it's a bracha levatolo. You have to have pleasure. That was the takoni. You should have pleasure from the neiros of Shabbos. So, the chazonish, this is a family, psak halacha, it seems like, the chazonish, the stipler, Chaim Kanievsky, and Rabbi Yashiv is a mechutim with the stipler, right? Chaim Kanievsky is the son-in-law of Rabbi Yashiv. They all paskin that you should light b'makam achila. That means if you're eating out, make sure that you light in the place where you eat, not at home. That means you should come there before Shabbos, right? And you light at the place where you eat. That's what they hold. Hilchos Rabbi, the Sefer the Stipler, with the stories and the minhagim of the Stipler. It's called Hilchos Rabbi, and he says the Stipler used to live in Rechav Rashbam, where Reb Chaim Kanievsky lives now, and he used to have an adjacent apartment with his daughter. His daughter used to live right next door, and she used to come and eat Shabbos with her father, the Stipler, and she would light, although it was just an apartment, or just a hop away, a step away, but nevertheless, she would light in the Stipler's apartment. Whenever she ate by her father. So that's what they hold. The halach is you should light the makam ha'achila, even if you're sleeping elsewhere.
What about lighting both places?
Oh, very nice. So the recommended thing to do is you should turn your light on and say L'Kavod Shabbos. Of course, not even L'Kavod Shabbos yet, and then go light the makam ha'achila. That's what Rabbi Moshe Sternbuch says to do that in Shuvas on Hagis. In Chiluk Beis, I think he says that that's what you should do. But the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos, of course, like every other great machlek sapaiskim, Shlomo Zalman holds that you have to light b'makom sheina. If you're sleeping at home, you should light b'makom where you're sleeping, and make sure the candles are going to be burning by the time you come home, so you can have enough from those candles. Shmir Shabbos Hilchos brings that down lahalacha. So this is a big machlekes. I'm not being machriya to you for you what to do. You should definitely ask someone before you decide on your own what to do. Whether you should light makam achila or you should light makam sheinu. Now it's practical. Sometimes it's actually practical to light the makam achila. Now this is very, very interesting. We learned that a woman is mekabel Shabbos as soon as she lights candles. Unlike a man is only mekabel Shabbos when he goes to shul. Right, but a woman is mekabel Shabbos when she lights candles. So now, some women want to not be mekabel Shabbos yet. They don't want to be mekabel Shabbos right away when they light. For example, what would be an example? A classic example. Classic case would be, let's say she lives in Eretz Yisrael and she wants to go Friday night to the Kaisel. That's a very common shayla. She wants to go to the Kaisel Friday night. Now she can't light at the Kaisel; she has to light at home. So now she wants to light at home, and then go to the kaisel. Right? She wants to go down and be mekabel Shabbos at the kaisel. She wants to walk with her husband to the kaisel. So she doesn't want to walk both ways. She wants to take a taxi. She wants to take a taxi to the kaisel, right? But then she has to light beforehand. But as soon as she lights, she's mekabel Shabbos. What should she do? It's not just the kaisel. Let's say you want to eat out, but you only walk. It's a long way. It's a far walk, right? You're impressed with you want to walk to Broughton Park. It's very far. Right? And you want to light at home, but then go into a taxi, go into a cab, and go into your car and drive afterwards to the place where you want to eat.
You make it tonight.
So the problem is that she is already mekabel Shabbos when she lights, so she can't go into a taxi, she can't go into the car anymore. You're not, because you could wait till you go to shul. But the problem is with her. So Yitzi is saying you can make it tonight, which is true. You could make it tonight. So a woman could make it tonight and say that I don't want to be Mekabel Shabbos yet. She doesn't have to be with pen, doesn't have to be with her mouth. She doesn't have to speak it out. Even if believe, even if she thinks, as when she lights, that she doesn't want to be Mekabel Shabbos yet, it's all right. But since it's a machlokas a poskim, whether you can make it tonight, the Mishnah Berurah says you should only make it tonight le'es hatzorich. Only if there's a tzorich or tzorich mitzvah. But stam to make it tonight is not recommended. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't like it. A woman should not make it tonight. Let's say she just wants to make it easier for herself because she's eating out and she wants to drive after she lights candles. She wants to drive to the place where she's eating. I'm not sure if that's called the Eisat Tzorich. And a woman should not make it tonight. She should walk. Or she's better off lighting at the place where she's going to eat, like the Stipler in chazonyisroel. Either she should light at the place where she's going to eat, and then she's not Mekabel Shabbos yet, she can still go with the car. Or if she lights in her own house, then she has to walk, because then she's Mekabel Shabbos. She can't make it tonight unless there's a tzorich. So what's an example of tzorich? By the way, the Shmir Shabbos brings down, he says, going to the koisel is not called the Eisat Tzorich. Someone might say, well, it's a mitzvah to go to the koisel, It's not heter, but if you're in Eretz Yisrael and she wants to light candles in the Mekabel Shabbos, then she wants to take a taxi, a monit to the koisel. Right? She say, okay, listen, I'll make it tonight. It's Eisat Tzorich. It's a tzorich mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to go to the koisel. Depends who you ask. If you ask a Satan or a Chassid, they'll tell you it's an Aveira. And if you ask somebody else, they'll tell you it's a big mitzvah. But the Shmir Shabbos says, he's neutral. He says, no, listen, it's not a mitzvah, it's not an Aveira. It's not a tzorich, it's nothing. You can't have a heter to make it tonight. Just to go to the koisel. So what would be, what we considered a tzorich or a mitzvah? So the poskim say, let's say if she wants to daven mincha. So if she's madlik neiris right now, she can't have mincha anymore because she's Mekabel Shabbos as soon as she lights. So once you're Mekabel Shabbos, you can't have mincha anymore. But for some reason she has to go light now, but she didn't have a chance to be mispal mincha yet. She daven mincha yet. So there, that's tzorich, and that's called the tzorich mitzvah. There, the poskim say that she can make it tonight. That type of scenario where it's a mitzvah or it's a real tzorich, there we allow her to make it tonight. But usually it's not recommended to make it tonight. And therefore, most women who want to eat out and they still want to go into a car and go there right before Shabbos, the recommended thing to do is tell them to light at the place where they're eating, because anyways, many places can learn that that's like a tchila what you should do. So therefore, the woman should light at the place where she's eating.
So every time someone eats out Friday night, you should have to light at the host.
According to the Stipler, according to the chazonyisroel, according to Rabbi Yashav, that's what you have to do. You have to light at the hosts. Wherever you're eating, that's where you should light. Now, I'm not saying that that's the minig in Klal Yisrael. I'm saying everybody has their own minig on this. If your minig is to light at home usually, but you still want to get into a car afterwards, which is problematic because she literally, then she's Mekabel Shabbos, she can't do it, then she could be soymech on the other poskim and go and light in the other place. She doesn't have to be Mekabel Shabbos yet.
Did you discuss about giving money to count for? Yeah.
You can do that too. But most women don't want to give up on the mitzvah of Adlakas Neiros. Most women would take along 2 candles at least to light.
It's more a man's thing to be mishtatev.
It's more a man's thing. Men don't light candles anyway, so they say, I'll be mishtatev, I'll pay you like a pruta or something to be mitzvah. Yeah. Could one be yoitza Adlakas Neiros with electricity? Turning on a light on Shabbos. So what's the shaila? The shaila is like this. Obviously there's no electricity in the times of Chazal. Right? So Chazal didn't speak about it. So what did they say? They said you should light a ner, a candle. Now the person can discuss, is a candle dafka or lav dafka? When they said ner, does that mean ner dafka or does that mean lav dafka? Because that was the only means of having light. They couldn't discuss electricity, but if we're Chazal around today, they would say, listen, fluorescent, anything you want, sure, as long as there's light. It doesn't have to be a candle. That's what Rabbi Yashav holds. Rabbi Yashav holds, it's lav dafka. Usually Rabbi Yashav is a big machber on this area, and this halacha, the Shvus Yitzchak brings down, but Rabbi Yashav is makel, he says, even a fluorescent light, which is not really eish, it's just gas, he says that you could still put it on before Shabbos, and that will be considered like you're mekayim the mitzvah of Adlakas Neiros. It's according to Rabbi Yashav, because ner is lav dafka. When Chazal said you should light a candle, that was because in those days that's what gave light. But it's not to say that you have to light dafka a candle. Nowadays that we have technology, you could light even a fluorescent light, that will be okay. That's according to Rabbi Yashav. But obviously, many people can argue. And this is an interesting machlokes though. It's not just the regular machlokes, some say you could, some say you don't, you can't. This is already a threefold machlokes here. Some say that it's ner dafka. Ner dafka, and you can't light any electricity, no matter what type of bulb you have, whether you have fluorescent or you have, those, there are other bulbs that has, what's it called? That has that chut, that wire. What?
Filament.
A filament, thank you. Which is eish, that's real eish. And the chazonyisroel of Nizkarel, it says you can't light in anything, you must have neirus. Neirus is what Chazal required you to have, not because they didn't have another means of creating light, because they required you to have ner. That's the beauty of ner. Shabbos, it should be a ner. That's according to Nizkarel. Many paiskim, Mashal, the Arletzian, Rabbi Abishalom, he writes, he's machalik. He says, listen, if it's something which has eish, a filament, right? So that's a chut, that wire, that's mamish fire. Says so that would suffice for adlakas nerus to cover Shabbos because Chazal were matzrich eish. Which characteristic of the ner are we makpid on? Which one is dafka? The fact that it should be eish. So that's what the Arletzian says. As long as the electricity that you're putting on, that you're turning on before Shabbos, is eish, is real fire, then you could be yotza with adlakas nerus with that. But fluorescent, which is gas, that he says you can't. And then you have Rav Shlomo Zalman. Rav Shlomo Zalman has a very interesting chiddush in electricity, lighting electricity for adlakas nerus. He says like this. He says, you could light something which has a filament, which is fire, but not something which is, I forgot what they call it in England. I know that in America they call it flashlight. They call it torch. He said it's got to be a torch. It's got to be only a torch. It can't be the thing that you light, on the wall, which you get from the Tachanat Chashmal, from the electricity company. You get every second you get electricity, new electricity. The new electricity is created from the beginning. They create every second new electricity. Why? Because a ner, one of the characteristics of a ner, Shlomo Zalman says, is that it has all the ability, right, all the potential right there in the package of the ner that it could be lit for the next half hour, so for the next hour, depending how long your ner is. He says, but if you're turning on the light and you're getting from the Tachanat Chashmal, so every second, right now, right, you can't get the electricity that you'll be getting in 5 minutes from now because that electricity is not ba'olam yet. They have to create that electricity and send it to you. So that, Rav Shlomo Zalman says that's vital for adlakas nerus, that it should be like a ner. The electricity, the fire that you're lighting, the electricity that you're lighting, instead of a ner, should have that characteristic of having all that ner, all that potential of being lit already here. And only a torch has that. You have the batteries, right? Until the batteries go out, you have enough electricity there present at the time that you're putting on the candles, at the time that you're lighting the torch. You have enough electricity there. So that's what Shlomo Zalman says. He says he would allow you to light and make a bracha on turning on a torch.
In Israel, a lot of people have a generator.
Right.
So that generator is going to be on the whole time.
That's very interesting. So a generator also, it works the way, it has a battery. Like what's a generator? A generator, it generates on its own. How does it work?
Petrol.
What?
Petrol.
It works with petrol. But it has all the petrol that it needs right there? Like how does it?
Yeah, as long as it's filled up.
As long as it's filled up. So very good. So that's also true, yeah. As long as you have already
generating electricity the whole time. What's the difference between that and a national grid where it's also... What's the difference? Because that's also producing the...
Is it also producing the same way? Is it producing the same way as a generator is producing it? I'm not sure how a generator works. I don't know the mitzvahs of a generator.
It's the same thing. It's just how big it is.
It's just a smaller thing. You can keep it in your house and nobody's doing malach on it. That's why they have generators. But it's basically the same technology as having electricity coming through. That's the way... Is that, yeah?
I'm saying it's a mini generator. Yeah.
It's got limited power, but that power is all... A limited power, but the power is all here. It's like a torch. So then it's fine.
Because they've got the petrol there, and then they put more in the next day. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know. But there's enough there to keep the country going, or they don't have to add coal the next hour. I don't know. So I was thinking with the gas cooker, it's proper Aish, so it's a gas cooker, but you've got a chasar on that. So even though it's a good light, it's just as good as an air. Then it's a chasar on, I'm saying.
But the question is, does it have all the electricity that it needs for the next half hour or so? Does it have all the electricity there?
Right.
So that's what Shlomo Zalman. Okay, that's what Shlomo Zalman's chiddush. There's one more issue besides the fact whether electricity can take the place of a ner. There's another issue with relying on electricity for Ner Shabbos, and that is the place can speak about the Har Tzvi. This is also, you have to know a little technology which I don't know unfortunately, but I'll rely on you to give me the information. when you turn on a switch, right? How does a switch work? There are two ways a switch could work. Either when you're turning it on, you're basically connecting the two wires, and therefore the electricity could
You complete the circuit.
and the electricity could go through now. Or the two wires are always connected. It's just there's a piece that's stuck in between, and you're just taking away the piece, and therefore it comes together. It comes together on its own, basically. You're not the one doing it via dime. You're not doing a ma'aseh via dime of connecting the two circuits, the two wires. You're just removing it. So the Hartzvi speaks about it. He says, if you're just removing it, if the way the switch works is you're just removing that bridge and allowing the circuit to complete, so you're not the one completing the circuit by hand. So that's only a groma. So you're just lighting candles begroma. Let's say that. Of course, that the electricity. Let's say it's all right. Rabbi Yashiv holds that even fluorescent is okay. We don't have a problem with using electricity instead of fire. But we have a new problem. Is turning on a switch, a light switch, is that called a ma'aseh b'yadayim? Are you actually doing a ma'aseh b'yadayim of lighting candles? Chazal or Matzrich, Chazal said that you have to go and light candles. You have to do actual ma'aseh. You can't just rely on something that was lit already. You have to do a ma'aseh. So is that considered enough of a ma'aseh? If the way the switch works is just pulling out the bridge and allowing the circuit to complete, that's only a grama. So if it's only a grama, you're not being the kind of the mitzvah of hadlokas neiros. The bracha is lahadlik neiros shel Shabbos. You go and be madlik neiros shel Shabbos, and the grama is not a ma'aseh hadloka. So the Hartzvi has a whole tshuva about this, and he's mechadesh. In one of the tshuvas, he says that it's still called a ma'aseh hadloka because for a ma'aseh mitzvah, you don't need to go ahead and complete a circuit b'yadayim. For a ma'aseh mitzvah, even a groma is considered a ma'aseh mitzvah. It's considered that you did it. As long as because of you, this candle is lit, that's enough. And he brings a very, very interesting raya. He says that, the avnei ha'ephod, he says, how are they carved? They carved in the names of the shvatim. So how are they carved? The halacha is, the Gemara's Medayik, the Pasuk says, B'milu Oisam says that you can't actually, remove part of the stone. You have to carve it in a way where nothing will be removed. No particles of the stone will be removed. How do you do that? It's almost impossible. If you're going to engrave it, something is going to come out. So the Gemara says they used to have a worm, it's called shamir. Yeah. And the shamir, basically laser technology, and not really, and that's what carved, that's what engraved, and that's the way they engraved it. That's the way they engraved the names of the shvatim in those stones. So he brings a very interesting cry. He says, the pasuk says, "Upitachto," you should do it. You're doing it. You're putting a shamir on the stone, and the shamir is basically doing it on its own. You're not doing anything. So the answer is that although it's a grama, but because you put the shamir down, even though it's only a grama, right? But for a ma'aseh mitzvah, that's considered like you did it. So that's a Hartzvi's raya. It's a fantastic raya. He has a whole arichas about this Indian. He says for a ma'aseh mitzvah, you don't necessarily need you to do the actual ma'aseh hadloka, as long as it came about through your action, either by pulling out the bridge and completing a circuit memela, or by putting the shamir down. That's already enough. Beseder. We'll stop over here.
Isn't that the past houses? Just like goes into the heteria, just one on.